Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs podcast, where our mission is to inspire, influence, and impact other immigrant entrepreneurs to follow their dreams and create the future they want. My guest today is a top-ranked business coach and a female coach, to be exact, Jenna Harrison. Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really love your show, as we were talking about before. And I think what you're doing here is so important and so great, and I'm just honored to be here.
Thank you, Jenna. Likewise, it's a pleasure to having you on. Jenna, please give our audience a quick overview of who you are, and even more important, why they should listen to you and what they would get out of the show at the end of the show.
I love that question so much. Absolutely. We're all busy in today's world, and let's make sure our time counts and the content that we're consuming counts as well. So, you all should really listen to this one. I know already we're going to have a great conversation just from what we were talking about before. But too many entrepreneurs are doing everything right except what actually works for them. And throughout this episode, I really want to help you be inspired and open your eyes and also your hearts to what is possible for you. And I want to provide my own story, stories of my clients to help you see how that actually works, and also give you some really practical strategies you can start implementing and talk about today.
Awesome. Jenna, before we get on, tell us where you are based currently and where you're originally from.
Certainly. I am based in Spain right now. We're on Mallorca, which is a little island off the coast of Valencia. And we've been here for about a year and could not be happier with our decision. It was a really difficult move. And I know all of your audience can relate to this, right? It's never easy to change countries. But hard things are so worth it. And this is one of those things.
And why did you move there?
So I actually lived here in my 20s. And I was an exchange student to Spain during university years. I fell in love. I came back after college, and then the relationship didn't last, but my love of not just Spain, but all of the Mediterranean region really continued with me. I was actually here as a baby as well with my mom and dad. And so it's something that's just kept pulling me back over and over. I was married to a career military person, and we would always find ourselves coming here. We would live in Germany, but we would spend all of our holidays and vacations down in Spain, Italy, Greece. And then finally, when he retired, we had location independence for the first time. And he retired in July, and we left later that month.
Wow. That's
Yes.
impressive. That's impressive. I've obviously talked to a few people that move usually the other way around from other sides
Yes.
of the world, other parts of the world to the US, but in your case, it's the opposite.
Yes. Yes, it is. And I've had my business in other countries as well. And so I've had the immigrant entrepreneur experience
Mhm,
in all different settings.
mhm. Awesome. All right, let's get into it. Jenna, tell us what do you do exactly?
Yeah. So I help women specifically because they have so many inherited and conditioned patterns that make it challenging for them to function as entrepreneurs in their highest potential, right? In their top peak performance. I help them clear all of that so they get back to what I call right conditions. I believe that all of us thrive naturally, just like, for instance, I love walking around here and seeing how an olive tree will grow straight out of a cliffside. It has no, artificial irrigation. Nobody is fertilizing it. And yet it will absolutely thrive. It will be abundant with olives falling, crashing down onto the rocks below it. And yet you take that same tree and you transplant it to quote unquote the most perfect growing conditions, someplace with really nutrient dense soil and lots of natural humidity, like the Mississippi Delta or something like that, that tree is going to wither and die. But when you can get in your right conditions, the things that don't necessarily look right for everyone else, but they're right for you, that is when your genius comes alive. And so I really help women kind of get rid of a lot of that conditioning, step into alignment, allow their intuition to come through, and really create much more powerful businesses than they started out with.
Awesome. So, how much do you believe in masculine and feminine energy, which has nothing directly to do with gender, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Tell us more about that.
I I believe that our human experience um, notices polarity in this way, in masculine and feminine. And so I do believe that we are witness to masculine and feminine energetics as we describe it and experience it. That being said, I think that the best businesses come from very harmonized masculine and feminine energetic within each person. So a lot of my clients will come with either a kind of wounded masculine energetic, which is what I experience myself, where we're really over functioning and we're really powering through, and maybe there's ego involved. And we really need to make friends with the beautiful creativity and intentionality of our masculine energetic and move into like a more healthy version of that experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
Okay.
It does.
Yeah.
So I have a burning question, and I wanted to wait with it a little bit down the conversation, but I can't. I have to ask right away.
Okay. Okay.
The hidden power of a 3-day work week. I cannot
Yes.
imagine that working. Change my mind.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Yes. And I've had so many people say, but is that possible with my industry? Or is that possible in this situation? And that is really what my work is all about. It's about helping people see what is possible for them and actually designing the life that they want and designing the business around the life that they want. So a 3-day work week is absolutely possible because here's what it does. It forces you to make the hard decisions about prioritization, about your best offer, about your best people, right? The questions and the decisions that you wouldn't normally ask yourself if you were filling up more time. It forces you to become a better leader, a better visionary, a better strategist. And it also gives you the really healthy downtime that is what has proven biologically to be what ignites our creativity, our deeper problem solving, our intuition that unfortunately we just can't get to when we're so deep into the hustle.
Okay. So if I was coming to you, let's say you would accept a mail
Yes.
client, and I would come to you and I'm like, hey, I love that. I love the idea. I believe in it. I know it might, or it's going to work for me, but give me the first and most important step that I need
Mhm.
to organize and structure in order to get to this, well organized work week, meaning reducing my time that is not efficient.
I love it. So good, so important. So I'm going to give you two things actually. I'll give you the tactical, what you can do here and now question to ask yourself. And then I also want to give you the overview so you have the full answer to that question because it's a really, really good one, really important. So the first tactical step is just to ask yourself, how in the world would I do that? How in the world would I create a 3-day work week? Because whatever objection your brain comes up with is exactly the problem that you need to solve in your business. And it's not just to get to a 3-day work week, it's the problem you need to solve to get to the next level in your business. A 3-day work week is just going to accelerate that process. But it is different for every person. So I like to say there are three main things. And by the way, not all of my clients want to create a 3-day work week at
Mhm.
all. A lot of people want to go from 60 hours to 50 hours. And that's fine because really what we're about is creating the life and the business you want rather than what your nervous system is, leading you into. But I find that there are three places that really have to get dialed in order to create this type of business. And number one is, what is your offer? Are you selling something that makes selling easy?
Mhm.
And number two is, how well does your business run? What are the systems? Where are the inefficiencies? How well of a leader or what kind of a team have you built, right? And how well are you leading them? And then the final thing is, how are you as a CEO? Because so much of this is about our thought errors, the things we think that just aren't necessarily true. And when we become more accepting of the fact that we can actually create what we want to, then we're able to actually reverse engineer the specific steps that are needed to get there. But if we don't believe it's possible, obviously we're not going to create it. I think there's a famous story about Roger Bannister, who was the first person to run a 4-minute mile. Before that, nobody thought it could be done. All of a sudden, afterwards, all sorts of people started running the 4-minute mile. And John Maynard Keynes was an economist who predicted that in the future we would be working just a very limited number of hours because our economies of scale and our specialization would allow humans to get to this point. But it's so interesting that we haven't, not
Mhm.
because we can't, but because our patterning keeps us in old systems.
Mhm. Mhm. And I also believe with the power of technology, you know, I 100% believe that I mean, we already are, right? But in the future, we will be more and more able to produce so much more without basically the heavy lifting and the time and the energy requirement that it gets. But in order to do that, as you say, we need to be very well organized and structured.
Yes, and we need to believe that it's possible, and we need to not tie our sense of worth and belongingness to the number of hours we work.
Mhm.
Because as long as we think it proves something about us and how good of a person we are, we're never going to give up all those extra hours working. We're still going to be seen as the hard worker who's working so hard.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
O- Often we think we deserve wealth or we deserve abundance or we deserve love if we're a hard worker. And those are hard things for the ego to give up.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of love and abundance,
Hmm.
where do you see, let's call it differentiation, if that's the right word, but correct me if I'm wrong, please, between the successful entrepreneurs who, you know, who, regardless of their achievement, who believe that they're worthy and they live in an abundant world and there is so much of everything they can have access to, and other entrepreneurs who are not less successful, but they're still coming from a place of lack, which, as we both know, is going to cost them a lot of energy and also cause frustration. And it's like always you're running behind or after something that you're never going to achieve.
Oh, yes. And I don't know about you, but I know that space so well. I've lived through it and I remember it very, very it's the type of feeling that I can get back to very quickly in my body. And I believe that it is all about really the tools that we've acquired for what I call mental sovereignty. It's also known as mental toughness and it's or mindfulness in other circles. And it's really just the ability to manage your mind, your thoughts, and regulate your nervous system. And so, as long as we believe that we can't change our thoughts and we believe that evidence, quote unquote, that we see is true, which it's absolutely not, it's always our perception. When we stay in that kind of rigid, fixed mindset, then we lose energy, we lose inspiration. We basically are kind of like, it's like Sisyphus pushing this boulder up the hill, and then it rolls back down, and there's some other challenge to overcome. You're pushing it up the hill, up the hill. And the alternative is to kind of let the boulder go and just go on a walk, right? Walk up the hill. Because usually when we look at it, the specific thing we need to do isn't that hard. We need to mm, go on a podcast and talk even though people might think we're crazy, right? We need to do the next step, and that's really not that hard. And it is a place where we can get to if we can just remain sovereign in our mind and not let all of our scarcity, our doubts, and our fears control us.
So, speaking of mental toughness, I know you have experience working with US Army. And
Yes.
when you come to a group of people like that, then they're not going to be like, oh yeah, let's sit and meditate and it's all going to be okay. So instead they're coming from they have a whole different perspective. What was your experience working with them, and how do you get them out of their structure that they have in their head, and they most of the time believe they're 100% right?
It was a fascinating experience for me because I grew up in the military. It forms a big part of my origin story, a lot of what I was rebelling against, the way that the way that it was run back then. And so when I came back into it as an adult, actually a 35-year-old, is when I married my husband and was brought back into that world. Um, I started they offer classes as well to the spouses, and I ended up getting my certificate in leader development from the US Army War College, which is their graduate level institution. And after that is when I went on to really help working with the soldiers and different units as well. And I was fascinated from the outside because I thought, how do they take these inner city youths, these disadvantaged people that tend to make up the majority of the soldier force in the United States? And what do? They put them through boot camp or something, and on the other end, they come out US soldiers? What is going on? It must be brainwashing. It must be fear tactics. Right? What is it? What I found out is that it was none of that. It was actually about identity creation nowadays in today's Army. And they have been working with, psychologists at the University of Pennsylvania on topics of resilience and on topics of, creating team culture and identity creation. And I found it really fascinating because what they came to find is that you can alter someone's behavior, their motivation through fear, but it's only temporary. But
Mhm.
if you can help them create a new identity, that is motivation that can last for the rest of their lives. And when I started to understand that, I started to apply it to everything else I was seeing in the world. And I started to see how powerful that was, and how strong our current adopted identities are, and what the process entails for actually creating new identities, for reinventing yourself, for becoming the person who was this, but now is that. And when I found that, it just seemed like I had unlocked the keys to the universe. I was so excited to take it out into the world. And I started out as a performance coach before I was a business coach, helping people accomplish their goals, achieve their big scary goals. And I soon realized, especially in the realm of entrepreneurship, that when you can apply these principles to people who are already forward thinking, who are already you know, um, that are action takers, that are goal setters, the result is very explosive.
That makes complete sense to me. But what does it take for someone to create a new identity?
Mm. It really takes I like to think of it as simpler than what we would imagine, because it goes back to what I talked about with the olive tree and how really what the olive tree has is the right conditions. for it to thrive. And I think that so much of what we see that gets in the way is something that's not even ours. It could be conditioning from our parents. It could be what's normal in our society. It could be experiences from our childhood that we interpreted in a certain way. It could be so many things that often we really just need to knock down the one block that is kind of the core source that's holding everything else in place. And when we do that, it makes it so much easier for the olive tree to grow. And there's really interesting evidence as well about this, about how much people can change and how easy it is for them to change. And so with my clients, it's really a three-step process. We start to observe what it was, what our current conditions are, right? Our current beliefs, our current way of thinking, because everything that you are thinking and believing, you're doing because you believe it's true. You believe it's true and you believe it's the best thing for you. A part of your brain believes it's the safest way to keep you going and to have you get what you want out of life. So we need to really see what that is first. And then the second part is we question everything. We really have to be willing to just burn the bridges and really look at ourselves in a very honest way. And then the third step is we set our intention of what we want to believe intentionally, as opposed to what we have just inherited or adopted. And then we work to create that with belief building, which is shown through MRIs, fMRIs, how plastic our brains are and how much we can change. And we just need the process of creating the change in order to create the change. The brain is really, really amazing. I've seen it for myself. I'm a completely different person than I was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And there's so many studies that show how we underestimate not only our ability to change, but how much we have changed. When we look back, 10 years ago, we'll often say, oh, I was basically the same person. But if they actually categorize your preferences, your wants, your desires, the way you handle different situations, the way you show up, you are a completely different person.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. So I have a question and I'm gonna make it a very extreme example.
Okay.
So how much is it possible to completely shift a personality and who we believe we are versus fine tune a little bit? Example, me, um, I consider myself someone who has never played basketball really like a game. And now I want to change my identity to become an MBA professional, which I also don't believe it's possible. Okay.
Yes.
Versus I want to get from where I am to maybe play my first, game with friends in 3 months
Mm.
and score
Mhm.
and score. Um, what do you believe is possible? How much does one need to be realistic versus having dreams and going after dreams?
Yes, yes. So it's really interesting. That question is also just a beautiful example of how the human brain thinks. Because whenever we hear a new idea, it's just so natural for us to go to the opposite side, right?
Mm,
To really like see the extremes. Like if it is this, it must be that we could just become NBA players, right? Or if it's possible, then this, then how, the other. And so this is just how our brains naturally find truth for ourselves and solution. But it's also part of the pushback process that can keep us a little stagnant if we're not watching for it. So I think it's a natural progression, but it's also something we have to be aware of when we start doing it. So another way to think about it is, how is it possible that this is true, right? How has this worked for me? How have I seen it in other people? What could be possible? And I really believe that that is the journey of our lives, The journey of our lives is exactly the question you asked. What is the truth about what is possible? And what is the benefit to me of shooting for that,
Mm,
even if there's a possibility I'll never reach it? Right? Who will I become in the process? Why is it worth it for me to set this goal? And what if it's possible? Absolutely, like I said, like Roger Bannister. What if it is possible? And the only reason I haven't been experiencing it is because I haven't opened myself to it yet.
mhm, mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
very
Do I
interesting.
believe that you could become an NBA player? No, quite honestly.
Right.
And that may be exposing a gap in my belief system as well.
Mhm,
But I have a feeling that it's something that, you know, there are kind of structural conditions around that that would prohibit you
mhm,
from actually creating that
mhm. Okay.
result.
Okay. Now, we both and many other people, we all have seen entrepreneurs, actors, athletes that set these audacious big goals, but they also achieve it. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
my question to you is how, and we also know if I can underline something or a goal or an achievement that is worth for me going after, if I can underline it with emotions and also tune these emotions into feelings that I'm experiencing right now. Now I might get woo-woo for some people, but I don't care because it's nothing but facts.
And it's your podcast.
And it's my podcast, so we get to discuss whatever we want. Um, then then it becomes, let's call it, much more loaded with something that keeps me pushing through all the obstacles and challenges and setbacks that I'm going to get into sooner or later. um, Now, what is your take on that? And how do I get to load these feelings and emotions on a goal that I feel it's worth going after?
Mm. Yes, we could go in many directions. I could go with you right down the woo channel if we wanted to. But I would say that just to your last question, my first of all, you asked my opinion on that. Absolutely agree. Without that sense of feeling, you're not going to create the same results. But in terms of how to create that feeling, I have a few different techniques that you all could try on. One is just a simple visioning exercise where you feel it, but instead of focusing on the end goal, you think about all the little details that you'll notice when you're at that goal. It could be the temperature in the room, it could be one smile from one person, maybe in an audience, if you're imagining yourself as a speaker.
Mhm,
But another thing which I find much more powerful for myself is to think back on a time when I felt that feeling already, where I
mm,
had the lived experience of that feeling. When I can think back on that time and I can create that sensation in my body, I can think about the future goal if I want to, but what I really need to think about is my next action. And that next action will be different if I'm kind of moving unintentionally in my hurried lifestyle pace, doing what I think I need to do to reach that goal. That action will be very different than if I get into that feeling state of when I know I've felt that before, the thing that I want to get to, and then I take action from there. It's going to be completely different. And the beauty is that you can't know how to create that result because you've never created it before. And the way you're going to get there, it's never going to be what you think unless you're doing a exact duplicate of something you've already done, which I don't think you'd even need to be creating these feeling states, right? But if you've never done it before, why are we using our logical brain to get there? Right? It really has to be a different
mm,
set of actions. They need to be breakthrough actions, right? So often I speak to people who have reached revenue plateaus, and that's because we we're in the same set of being and action, and what our business really needs is a new way of thinking, a breakthrough, something completely uncommon and new to us that we'll only access by getting out of our head and into our knowingness. We let go of our knowledge for the benefit of our knowingness.
Mhm. Mhm. I have another question, Jenna.
All
So,
right.
do you believe that everything we want and desire exists in the fourth dimension?
I do, as a matter of fact. No one has ever asked me that question. But I do. I believe, going back to the masculine and feminine energy, that there is a vast infinite potential and that it takes human consciousness to intersect with it and create possibility. But everything is available, and we are the ones that are creating the possibility in this world, this
Mhm.
realm.
That's what I believe too, by the way. Okay. And
Ah,
now I have a
interesting.
follow up question. So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure who that was, but some time ago, I was listening to an interview. I think it might have been Mel Robbins. Okay.
Mm,
But don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. However, this person was talking about, one thing is that we focus on the end goal, what it feels like, when we achieve the goal that we set in mind, and so on and so forth. And but she was talking about, hey, also focusing on how I get over the obstacles and setbacks during the process, me getting to my end goal or vision, and how I do get over the setbacks and challenges and overcome these challenges. Now, fair
mm,
enough, I believe that's a good technique. However, coming back to what we think we create, I'm like, if I'm thinking about this, overcoming these challenges, I'm also co creating them, right?
mm,
And I don't want that. I just want to go. I mean, if challenges appear, I'm happy to handle them and get over them, but I don't necessarily want to create them, right?
mm. Yes, yes. I love this topic. So I would move to think about it in the past tense. So when an obstacle has happened, the way I create safety in my nervous system going forward is that I've learned everything I needed to about that situation, right? That's how I know I'm not going to blow all my money again, right? I'm not going to make this terrible
Mm,
investment, or I'm not going to do whatever it is that I needed to learn. I'm not going to veer from my path and forget that this really is the work that I'm here to do in the world. All of that happens when I've had an opportunity. I call them opportunities from the universe for clarity. And whenever there's an obstacle, it's an opportunity for me to get clearer on something, to learn more. And when that happens, I believe I'm fully held. I'm in complete trust, and I'm grateful. And then I learn what I need to learn, not expecting more obstacles to come up, just knowing that I'm held.
mhm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're already over half an hour. I want to be respectful of your time, but I also have so many questions. Let me let me
I
at
have a
least.
few more minutes if you like,
Okay,
but
perfect.
I know you tend to keep most of your interviews to
Right.
a,
Perfect.
digestible length for your audience too.
So one burning question that I have is, what are your tips for getting clarity on highest leverage opportunities for entrepreneurs, but also in personal life?
Mhm. Yes, thank you for that question. So the baseline is that we have to be in in a rested state of some sort, right? If our nervous system is completely in fight or flight, then we're really not going to be able to access the higher level either intuition or problem solving that we need in order to get clear on our highest leverage opportunities. The second thing is to identify if there's anything in you that would not want you to get clear. If there's any little part of you that would prefer you don't get clear. And I have a personal story about this. I spent 2 decades stuck, not sure what kind of business I wanted to start. And I thought it was a clarity issue. I thought that I was multi passionate and there are just too many things that I'm interested in, and how could I ever choose? But what I came to realize was that I actually had a deep fear of failure.
Mm.
And even though I had accomplished all sorts of wonderful things on paper in the university and in my corporate career, the truth is, when it came down to it, declaring what I was about to the world and going out there and speaking my truth and maybe failing at that thing that I really cared about. I didn't really care about the corporate jobs, but if I were really going to care about something, I couldn't bear to fail at it. And so as long as I stayed unclear, then I didn't need to worry about any of that. So when I finally realized that that block was really what was keeping my clarity from coming, I had this burst of a week or so of downloads and epiphanies like I've never had before. And I created this system called Connect the Dots, which I now use with my clients to help them really tune into their purpose and their secret sauce. And it all came by removing the thing that was really keeping me from getting clear. So I'd say those two things first. If you haven't created the right state, either because you're too overworked or because there's something blocking you from clarity, then it's going to be very difficult for you to get clarity. But the next piece is that I believe that we can always, um, I believe it's like a fork in the road, right? And you need to be clear enough on what your deeper reason is, what your deeper purpose is, so that when you get to a fork in the road, even if you're not certain of the right thing to do, the correct path, you can say, this one is closer to where I'm going, right? This one makes more
Mm.
sense. A lot of times, it's not what you want to hear because it turns out that's the scary thing that you would really prefer not to do, but you can't deny it. When you create that kind of question for yourself, is this moving me? Which of these two is moving me closer to the result that I want to create in the world, the impact that I want to make in the world, and the way that I'd like to see my legacy in the world? It makes your decisions much clearer and cleaner.
Mhm. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for that. So, at what stage do your clients usually come to you, and who are they? You know, when I listen to you, and when we were previously talking about CEOs, then I imagine, okay, you only work with high level CEOs, entrepreneurs who have these teams that they can build or they can leverage in order to have a buffer between themselves. So in order
Mm.
to get to this three 3 day work week, right? So
Yes.
I would like to get some clarity on that.
Thank you so much for bringing that up because I've worked with stay at home moms that have no idea what kind of business they want to start. All the way to, yes, I've worked with seven figure, multiple seven, eight-figure entrepreneurs that have teams in place. So the truth is, it's not actually about, because it's so funny. Sometimes I'll have people that are earlier in their business that say you must need a big team in order to work that way. But I also have people that come to me with big teams and say, well, yeah, if I were a solopreneur, I could get away with that, but I run a team now.
Mhm.
So really, it is possible. It's just about decision making. And so often people think they need a new strategy, but really what they need is decision making,
Mhm.
right? And obviously seeing how it's possible because sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. But I've worked with all sorts of entrepreneurs and I love that variety. I've worked with people on 5 different continents in all different industries. Sometimes they surprise me, how they found me, where they come from, people that own supermarkets,
Mm.
all the way to, like I said, a stay at home mom that wants to help other moms as a parenting coach. it's just fascinating. And I don't know if your listeners would know this. Obviously, they wouldn't actually. But if you look up business coach for women entrepreneurs or business coach for female entrepreneurs, I am on the first page of Google in many countries, number one, two, or three. And so I meet all sorts of people, and I just consider it a blessing every time I see a call book in because I never know who I'm going to talk to.
Mm,
But I do believe that we get called to work with certain people, like our souls get called to work together to to each of us figure out things. I learn from each of my clients, they learn from me, and together we create something that we probably wouldn't have seen created in the world without our collaboration.
mm. By the
Yeah.
way, before I forget, I
Mm.
definitely will connect you with my wife and her co-founder because they started the business here last year. Was it last year? This year in here in Florida in Tampa. And what they do is they have an event for
Mm.
women. It's called Afternoon Divas. It's basically a dance event, and
Ah.
it starts at 6 and finishes at 10. It's for moms, female entrepreneurs, business women, stay home moms, and they get together and they get to go back at 10 p.m. to their families.
Mm.
And so I think there might be some synergies that you both can support
Yes,
each other.
thank you. Thanks. I'd be grateful for that. And also for any men listening as well, I do take on private clients who are men. In the past, I find that, especially with immigrant communities, we do share a lot of the same overlaps in our conditioning just because we are minority groups of different types, but that creates some of the same um, necessities and tendencies in a lot of us. So I do see overlap in different communities.
Perfect. So where can people find you?
Please come visit me at theuncommonway.com. I am on social everywhere at The Uncommon Way, but I also have a podcast called The Uncommon Way. So I'm very, very easy to find.
Perfect. And we will definitely link you up in the show notes so people can find you. Jenna, before I let
Perfect.
you go, one last question. Was there anything I should have asked you and I missed out?
No, in fact, there were so many questions I had no idea you were going to ask. I think we covered a broad range. I would let your listeners know, though, that if they are curious about the 3-day work week, whether or not they would like a 3-day work week, but they just want to start opening their minds to what's possible, I do actually have a quiz that they can take to see how many hours they could gain back using my methods, and also where their highest leverage opportunity is. Because remember, we talked about how it's different for everyone. And there are three main camps that I see: either the offers, the systems, and how the business is run, or their own mindset. And so, if you're curious about which would be you, then I'd encourage you to come take that assessment, and I'll give you that link as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Jenna, it was a pleasure having you on the show. I truly enjoyed the conversation outside of the
Thank you.
podcast. I learned so much and I gained so much. Thank you so much for taking the time, coming on the show, and giving so much value to our audience.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for this rich conversation. It was really fun and interesting.
Absolutely.